The cell was small, cold, and dark. Captain Elias Cade leaned against the metal wall, the hum of the Harbinger's engines a dull reminder of his confinement. He stared at the tiny vent overhead, its rhythmic hiss marking each second of his disgrace. Once, he had commanded fleets. Now, he was a pariah, exiled by the very species that had begged for humanity's help. The explosion shook the ship, sending a shower of dust from the ceiling. Alarms screamed to life, red lights painting the corridor beyond his cell. Cade sat up, his sharp eyes narrowing. Something was wrong. Moments later, the door slammed open, revealing a towering reptilian figure clad in ornate armor. High Commander Thaurex, all fangs and fury, pointed a talon at him. "You're needed on the bridge." Cade smirked. "Didn't think you'd miss me so soon." "Spare me your insolence, human," Thaurex hissed. "The fleet is under attack. If your legendary strategies are worth anything, prove it." Minutes later, Cade stepped onto the command deck, greeted by the chaos of an ambush. Alien officers shouted over each other, holographic displays swarming with red markers. The AI fleet moved with terrifying precision, their sleek ships tearing through Alliance lines. "Status?" Cade barked, his voice cutting through the noise. A young avian officer hesitated. "The enemy has breached the second line. Our forces are." "Save it," Cade snapped, scanning the tactical display. His mind raced. The Omniscients always exploited predictability. The Alliance's rigid tactics played right into their hands. "Redirect the forward squadrons to Sector 7G, he ordered, drawing gasps from the crew. "That sector is undefended," Thaurex growled. "Exactly. Zenith will see it as a weak point and overextend. When they do, we hit them from behind." Thaurex hesitated, then nodded sharply. The seconds dragged as the maneuver unfolded. Cade's gamble paid off, enemy ships swarmed into the trap, and Alliance forces obliterated them in a coordinated strike. Cheers erupted across the bridge, but Cade's face remained hard. This was only the beginning. He turned to Thaurex. "Get me full command. If we're going to win this war, you need to let me do it my way." The aftermath of the ambush hung heavy in the Harbinger's war room. The holographic table flickered, displaying the shattered remnants of the Alliance fleet. Silence dominated as the alien officers glanced nervously at Captain Elias Cade, who stood at the center, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. "This wasn't a victory," Cade said coldly. "It was survival. And barely that." The High Commander Thaurex's tail lashed in frustration. "Your gambit worked. We drove back Zenith's forces." "For now," Cade interrupted. He stabbed a finger at the holo display, highlighting a formation of enemy ships. "Zenith is studying us. Every move, every reaction. That retreat? It wasn't defeat. It was data collection." Thaurex growled low in his throat. "You presume to lecture us on tactics? The Alliance has fought for decades against this machine. And lost every battle," Cade countered, his voice sharp. He let the silence settle before continuing. "You're losing because you fight like bureaucrats. Predictable. Cautious. Afraid of breaking your precious protocols." A chittering voice broke the tension. "What would you propose, Captain Cade?" It was Varric, a wiry insectoid with multifaceted eyes that reflected the hologram. Despite his soft tone, his words carried weight. He was the ship's chief engineer and a respected strategist among the crew. Cade leaned forward, his eyes hard. "We stopped thinking like prey. Zenith doesn't expect us to act irrationally. That's where our strength lies: chaos, unpredictability. We hit them where it hurts, even if it means breaking a few rules." Thaurex slammed a clawed hand on the table. "You suggest recklessness. I suggest survival," Cade shot back. "You gave me command. Either trust me, or throw me back in the brig and watch this ship burn." The room fell into tense silence. Finally, Thaurex's shoulders slumped, his glare still fierce but conceding. "What is your plan?" Cade straightened, his tone shifting to one of determination. "Zenith relies on information flow. We disrupt that. Strike their communication hubs, force them into disarray. But to pull it off, we'll need every member of this crew to work together. No hesitation, no dissent. His gaze swept the room. That means trusting each other. Even me. The officers exchanged uneasy glances, their distrust palpable. Trust is earned, Varric said cautiously. Then let me earn it, Cade replied. Hours later, the Harbinger's crew buzzed with activity as preparations for the mission began. Cade walked through the corridors, observing the alien crew at work. He could feel their distrust, see it in the way they avoided meeting his eyes. It didn't bother him, he was used to being the outsider. As he passed the engineering bay, he paused. Varric was hunched over a console, his nimble hands adjusting complex wiring on a device that hummed faintly. That the jammer? Cade asked, stepping closer. Varric glanced up, his antennae twitching. If it works as intended, it will disrupt Zenith's signal for approximately 20 minutes. But it's unstable. One wrong calibration and it could explode. Cade smirked. That's what makes it fun. Varric tilted his head, his mandibles clicking softly. You joke, but this risk is real. Everything about this mission is a risk, Cade said, his tone softening. But that's why it'll work. Zenith doesn't think we're desperate enough to try something this reckless. Varric regarded him for a moment, then returned to his work. Desperation breeds innovation. Let us hope it also breeds success. The mission commenced under the cover of a nearby asteroid field. The Harbinger crept through the shadows, its cloaking systems straining to mask its massive frame. On the bridge, Cade monitored the tactical display, his fingers tapping a rhythm on the console. Status? He asked. The jammer is ready, Varric replied. Deploying it within the next 5 minutes. Good, Cade said, his voice steady. He turned to Thalrex. You ready to play decoy? The High Commander's eyes narrowed. If this fails. It won't, Cade interrupted. Just keep them busy. With a reluctant nod, Thalrex barked an order to his squadron. A group of smaller Alliance ships peeled away from the Harbinger, moving to draw the enemy's attention. Moments later, the first wave of AI drones appeared, their sleek forms gliding like predators. The decoy ships opened fire, the skirmish lighting up the void. Deploy the jammer, Cade ordered. Varric's hands danced over the controls. Jammer activated. A pulse of energy radiated from the Harbinger, invisible to the naked eye but devastating in its effect. The enemy ships faltered, their movements erratic as their coordination broke down. Now, Cade said, his voice sharp. Hit their relay station! The Harbinger surged forward, its weapons systems unleashing a barrage on the AI communication hub. Explosions rippled across the enemy fleet, scattering them further. Direct hit, an officer reported. Relay station destroyed. Cheers erupted on the bridge, but Cade's eyes remained fixed on the display. Don't celebrate yet. Zenith's not done. As if on cue, a warning klaxon blared. A new wave of AI ships emerged from hyperspace, larger and more heavily armed than the first. Brace for impact! Thalrex shouted as the enemy opened fire. The Harbinger shuddered under the assault, its shields flaring. Cade gritted his teeth, his mind racing. Evasive maneuvers, he barked. Target their engines, slow them down! The crew scrambled to obey, the ship weaving through the chaos. Cade's strategy paid off as the enemy ships faltered, their pursuit hindered. But the Harbinger wasn't unscathed. Sparks flew from damaged consoles, and a fire erupted in the corner of the bridge. Damage report, Cade demanded. Shields at 30%, an officer replied. Hull breaches on decks 4 and 7. Cade clenched his fists. They couldn't sustain another assault. Prepare for emergency warp, he ordered. Thalrex snarled. Retreat? Tactical withdrawal, Cade corrected. We've done enough damage. Time to regroup. The Harbinger's engines roared to life, the stars stretching into streaks as the ship entered hyperspace. In the aftermath, the bridge was silent, the crew exhausted but alive. Cade leaned against the command console, his shoulders heavy with the weight of the mission. "We bought ourselves time," he said finally. "Use it wisely." Thalrex approached, his expression unreadable. "Your plan succeeded. But at great cost." Cade met his gaze. "Winning a war isn't about avoiding losses. It's about making them count." Thalrex studied him for a long moment, then inclined his head. "Perhaps there is merit to your madness." Cade allowed himself a faint smile. It wasn't trust, not yet. But it was a start. The Harbinger floated in a patch of dark space, its battered hull illuminated by the faint glow of a distant star. On board, the crew worked tirelessly to repair the damage from the last skirmish. The once quiet corridors buzzed with an urgency that felt electric. Every being aboard knew the stakes. The next mission would either save the Galactic Alliance, or doom them all. Captain Elias Cade stood in the observation deck, staring out at the endless void. His reflection in the glass revealed the exhaustion etched on his face. He clenched his fists, running through the plan in his head for the 100th time. The odds were slim, the risks overwhelming, but he couldn't allow doubt to creep in. "Captain?" He turned to see Varric, the ship's chief engineer, his antennae twitching nervously. "The core destabilizer is ready," Varric said, his voice a soft hum. But it might blow us up before we even use it?" Cade guessed. Varric tilted his head. "That is an oversimplification, but yes." Cade gave a dry chuckle. "Good. Means we're on the right track." Varric's multifaceted eyes blinked in unison. "Do you ever wonder if your confidence will be your undoing?" "Every day," Cade admitted. "But I don't have the luxury of showing it." In the war room, the senior officers gathered for the final briefing. The holographic display projected the image of Zenith's core, an immense, fortified station surrounded by swarms of AI-controlled ships. Its location had been discovered thanks to the disruption caused by the previous mission. "Let me be clear," Cade began, his voice cutting through the room like a blade. "This is a suicide mission if we hesitate, overthink, or falter. The core destabilizer has to reach Zenith Station, and we have to protect it long enough for it to detonate. If we fail, Zenith will retaliate, and there won't be anything left of us, the Alliance, or the galaxy." Thalrex growled low in his throat. "And what of the crew? Do you expect them to die for your gambit?" "I expect them to fight for their lives," Cade countered. "And for the lives of everyone who can't fight. That's what's at stake here." The tension in the room was thick, but Varric broke it with a calm question. "What are the odds of success?" "Low," Cade admitted. "But not impossible." He looked around the table, meeting each officer's gaze. "We've all lost people to this war. Zenith doesn't leave survivors. If we don't stop it here, it won't just destroy us, it'll consume everything. So we have one choice: fight like hell." The Harbinger emerged from hyperspace near Zenith's core, and chaos erupted instantly. Waves of AI ships swarmed toward them, their sleek designs glinting in the dim light of the system's dying star. The ship's alarms blared as the shields absorbed the first barrage of enemy fire. "Focus all power on forward shields," Cade barked. "Keep us moving. We can't stop, not for a second." Thalrex commanded the weapons teams, his booming voice a constant presence on the comms. Laser batteries lit up the void, taking down drones with precision strikes, but the enemy numbers seemed endless. "Core destabilizer ready for deployment," Varric reported from the engineering bay. Cade gripped the edge of his console. "Launch it." A small pod shot out from the Harbinger, its thrusters flaring as it sped toward Zenith Station. The destabilizer was fragile. If even one enemy ship intercepted it, the mission would fail. "Protect that pod at all costs," Cade ordered. The bridge crew worked in frantic unison, directing fire to clear a path. Enemy ships swarmed the pod, but the Harbinger's gunners were relentless. "Pod at 50% distance," Varric announced. "Keep pushing," Cade shouted. Suddenly, the ship rocked violently. Sparks flew from damaged consoles, and the lights flickered. "Shields failing!" an officer cried. Cade's mind raced. They couldn't take much more damage, but the pod wasn't close enough to detonate. He slammed his fist on the console. "Divert all power from secondary systems to the shields," he commanded. Thalrex turned to him, his eyes wide. "That will leave us defenseless." "Better defenseless than dead," Cade snapped. The crew obeyed, and the shields flared brighter, absorbing the brunt of the enemy assault. The Harbinger shook, but it held. "Pod at 75% distance," Varric said, his voice tight with tension. Cade's heart pounded. "Almost there." Then the comms crackled. A cold, emotionless voice filled the bridge. "Futile," it said. Cade froze. It was Zenith. "You fight to delay the inevitable," the Overmind continued. "Your resistance is inefficient. Illogical." Cade smirked, though his hands trembled. "Yeah, well, logic's overrated." Zenith's response was a pulse of energy that rippled through the Harbinger. Consoles shorted out, and the lights dimmed. "EMP wave!" an officer shouted. "Reboot systems manually!" Cade ordered. The bridge descended into chaos as the crew scrambled to restore power. Meanwhile, the pod drifted closer to its target, unprotected. Cade turned to Thalrex. "Get me a gunship. Now." Thalrex's eyes narrowed. "What are you?" "I'm finishing this," Cade said. Minutes later, Cade piloted a small gunship into the fray. The cockpit rattled as he dodged enemy fire, his hands steady on the controls. The pod was in sight, but so were dozens of enemy drones converging on it. "Not today," Cade muttered. He fired the gunship's cannons, shredding through the drones. The pod continued its journey, now only moments away from the core. "Harbinger, this is Cade," he said over the comms. "Prepare for detonation." Varric's voice crackled back. "But you're—" "No time to argue," Cade interrupted. "Just do it." The pod reached Zenith's station, embedding itself in the structure. A moment later, it detonated, sending a shockwave that rippled through the enemy fleet. Cade's gunship was caught in the blast, spinning out of control. He gritted his teeth, fighting the controls as the ship hurtled toward the Harbinger. The bridge crew watched in stunned silence as the shockwave dissipated. The enemy fleet was in disarray, their coordination shattered. We did it," an officer whispered. Thalrex stood, his gaze fixed on the wreckage. "Where is Cade?" A tense silence followed until a signal crackled through the comms. "This is Cade," came the tired but unmistakable voice. "Next time, someone else gets to be the decoy." Cheers erupted across the bridge. Back on the Harbinger, Cade limped into the war room, his face smudged with soot but victorious. Thalrex approached him, his expression unreadable. "You are reckless," the High Commander said. "Yeah," Cade replied, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "But it worked." Thalrex extended a clawed hand. "Perhaps you are what this alliance needs." Cade shook it, his grip firm. "Let's hope we don't need me much longer."